Well, it's official. Israel's parliament has ratified the first part of the government's plan to limit the powers of the judiciary. The motion, which was initially floated by the Netanyahu government in January this year, is inching closer to becoming a law after it was passed by a majority of lawmakers this afternoon. The reasonableness clause has been passed with a whopping 64-0 majority by Knesset lawmakers. The pivotal development comes after 6 months of protests and parliamentary maneuvering and compromise talks. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been pushing for the controversial reform despite facing flack from all quarters. A relentless Netanyahu left hospital after being fitted with a pacemaker this morning, and he made sure that the bill secured the required mandate, notwithstanding 29 weeks of non-stop protests. Netanyahu and his far-right allies have maintained that the reforms are required for overhauling the judiciary. They are being brought in to rebalance powers between the courts, the lawmakers and the government. However, critics and opposition have termed the overhaul plan as a coup from the get-go. They believe that the overhaul threatens to turn Israel into a dictatorship by removing the most significant checks on government action. The motion was passed after an hours-long heated debate on the reasonableness clause. The clause impacts the High Court of Israel's ability to review the reasonableness of government decisions. It has now been done away with, and that's a massive win for the country's hard-right government and the very first victory for Netanyahu's government's planned judicial overhaul. However, swaths of protesting Israelis are not on the same page. Even before Knesset lawmakers began deliberating the clause, thousands of Israeli protesters rallied outside the Knesset building. Some even chained themselves to gates and blocked roads. It was a last-ditch attempt to prevent lawmakers from entering the compound. Israeli police resorted to using water cannons to disperse the demonstrators multiple times. The Knesset began discussing the first part of the reform on Sunday. The discussion went on almost 26 hours because many lawmakers requested time to speak. However, the passage of this crucial first piece of legislation comes with new challenges for Israel's government. Thousands of military and Air Force reserve forces have threatened not to report if the bill passes, which has now happened. This worrying development comes at a time when the country is also embroiled in external conflicts. It will be interesting to see how the Netanyahu government manages to allay fears of all stakeholders, if it does at all, and if Netanyahu himself says true to the word and tries to build consensus.
After 6 months of protests, the first judicial reform bill has passed in Israel, despite last-minute efforts to try and reach a compromise between the parties and then from within the coalition. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defence Minister Gallant were said to be in favour of a pause, with Justice Minister Levin and Police Minister Ben-Gvir reportedly threatening to bring down the government if the bill didn't pass today. According to the new law, judges can judge based on law but not on whether they consider cabinet or minister decisions to be reasonable. The protest leaders say they will continue protesting. This is Jodie Cohen for WION. World is One.
Well, today the government is trying to prevent the court from being able to criticize it in order that it could perform unreasonable acts in most extreme way. And here we're gathered thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are protesting against the government, saying no more, we will not let you get over the judicial system. It's important for our rights and it's important for our democracy.
So I'm with Yuval, who's also been at the protest for many weeks now. Yuval, are you going back to the Knesset now to protest? How important and how effective will these protests be?
So as you know, the legislation passed. I'm going to protest with my friends now because they are there standing in the sun and shouting, and I want to stand with them in solidarity. They are my brothers, they are my friends to the protest. But we have to think over of new ways to oppose, to do more education and to bridge the gap between the Israeli society and talk about real democracy and what it's like.